So, Connie, you started your career as a nurse and you never aspired to be an entrepreneur. In fact, you initially wanted to be a family doctor and you pursued nursing as that stepping stone. And you mentioned that your father was a businessman. So you saw him working in the business world and you didn't like what you saw there. Yet here we are today, an extremely successful entrepreneur leading an organization with a powerful mission. Can you share a little bit about that journey to where you are today and some of the greatest lessons that you've taken away?
You're absolutely right. I am a registered nurse, but I actually was a healthcare aide, or they call them PSWs. Prior to that, working in a nursing home, and it helped put me through school because I had been on my own for a fair bit of time. In fact, since I was of the age of 15. So I really had to write my own success story. But what I really knew was that I love people and I wanted to help people. So again, I began that journey in a nursing home. I learned there both who I wanted to be and who I didn't want to be. And I remember saying to a bunch of colleagues, if ever I'm a leader anywhere, if I have that great fortune, I'll never treat people the way that PSWs are treated in long-term care. And lo and behold, look where we are today. So I became a nurse and actually loved what I did, but that pregnancy thing happened, and I was in Calgary, and it didn't work out to go to med school. And so being married to an immigrant Italian, we had to move back with his close to his family here in Ontario, as he's an only child. And I went back to school to become a critical care nurse. I didn't understand then what I understand now, but I only ever worked night shifts. Coming from a teaching hospital to a smaller hospital, it was even worse. So I worked nights and my peers loved that and I loved that. And it worked out well because I had 2 children at the time. And so I did leave acute care and came out into the community to see, what could I do? Because in acute care back then, innovation wasn't an option. And so I came into the community. I had the great fortune of helping close the Christopher Robin Home for Children. But what I saw when I went into that home was horrifying, and how these children who were so vulnerable and babies were being treated, and how their parents believed they were getting the best care possible. So I took on that role. It was a defining moment for me to help remove them from the home and bring them back to their community. Although I still believe the system failed them because they didn't go home with their families, they went into a group home, but still it was better than where they were located. And they used a parent model in these group homes. So less than ideal, but much better where they were. When I was doing that role, I purchased community services, and I was really shocked at the lack of transparency and accountability in the community care sector. So after I worked for 3 years to ensure the children were safe, I stayed on call 24/7, never took a day off. I said to my husband, I've accomplished the goal, it's time to move on. And he supported me to take a bank loan and to start pounding the pavement to see if I could make a difference in community care, especially for children who had significant vulnerabilities. I was young. I was just turning 30 when I opened the company.
You had both your kids by then already?
Yes, I did. I had 2 children under the age of 5 when I opened the company.
To have that vision and build a business itself is a huge step. You had your house on the line. You had 2 little kids under 5. Did you ever question your idea, your vision at the beginning? How did you deal with the others who may not have supported you, or how did you get the right people to support you on this journey?
That's a really, really good question, because I was quite surprised after feeling a bit heroic after my interventions with those children. I was shocked when I came and opened a private company, how many people that I thought respected me turned against me for opening a company. And that was very, very difficult for me. And I spent many, many nights crying, coming home from work crying when people who had leadership positions acted in bad faith, when in fact I hadn't done anything wrong, and I was really trying to make a difference in the lives of children. So that was a very difficult time for me, but it carried on for years. And I was quite naive because my mind doesn't go that way to be mean to people. So it was a real learning experience. I'm glad that I was naive and think that everybody is nice and should be nice. But it really kickstarted me to prove people wrong, that I wasn't a bad person. I was trying my best to be a really good person, but I now know after all these years, there are just bad people out there, and you can't change that type of leadership character.
And how do you deal with those kinds of people?
Well, back then, I've evolved over time. I don't take things as personal now as I did back then. Everything was personal because I just felt like I was giving my all. And it felt extremely personal, and many of the comments were quite personal. I tried to push back in a respectful and professional way to prove people wrong. I still do that today, but now I know that some people just have ideologies and some people don't have great leadership character, and you can't change those people.
And when you initially had this idea of starting your own company, was it just you and your husband, the two of you pretty much? Did you have anybody else? How did you start the process?
I learned really, really quickly that my husband was my therapy. And so we had an agreement that he would not be involved in the business and he would be my therapy when I needed therapy. So it was me that just started. I brought in a partner because I didn't want to open a business out of my home. So in exchange for shares in the company, I had an office located in Mississauga. And to talk about my father being an entrepreneur, he had an office at home, and that was very disruptive for the whole family, and I didn't want to do that.
So what did you learn about partnering with somebody and starting a company?
Yeah, I learned, I had a number of partners that I gave shares away in the company, and I learned over time that partnerships might serve a purpose, but you have to have a good way of getting out of them when your partner no longer shares the same values as you do. So having ironclad shareholder agreements right from the very beginning is extremely important. And sometimes you just outgrow people.
And when you first started your business, I know you said you had a lot to learn regarding business itself. Where were you starting? What did you know about starting a business when you initially undertook this idea?
I didn't know anything about starting a business. I had managed a government budget, which is totally different. I didn't know anything about finance. And so I had to go back to night school as well so that I could speak the same language as the bankers and the accountants. I remember sitting in the bank, and I won't name which one, but waiting for my turn to meet with the bank manager. And he was meeting with a gentleman prior to me, and they sounded chummy and buddy and all of that. I went in, and the first words out of his mouth to me were, "Now, darling, what are you hoping to do?" And so I actually stood up and stood my ground and said, "I'll come back when you're prepared to talk to me like you just talked to that gentleman that laughed. But until then, we don't have anything in common." And it ended up working out to be a strong relationship, but I had to stand my ground right up front. because I didn't want to be treated like a little girl
Mm-hmm.
that was extremely vulnerable or at the mercy of the bank.
And initially, when you started your company, it was about children, you said.
Yes.
And then how did it change over the years?
Well, I learned the hard way in all of my advocacy efforts to help this vulnerable population, children living with significant genetic anomalies or cancer or whatever. I would advocate every step of the way for increased parental support and autonomy. And I kept getting told, Connie, you just don't get it. You're naive. You don't get it. Children don't vote, so they'll never make it to the top of the priority list. And I always felt that was wrong because sick kids is at the top of the priority list for everybody. In fact, I co-authored a book with sick kids that was purchased internationally. But I learned quickly, in order to support the children properly, we had to diversify, to stabilize, and be able to have the proper leadership supports in place around quality, around finance, and all of that. We had to diversify.